actually see what you're sharing?
Yeah, it's paused right now. I think I need to get the
Okay.
recording going. Oh, the recording has started. Perfect.
We
And
still
now,
can't see what you're sharing.
yeah, I'm opening it now. Now are you able to see it?
Yes.
Yeah, we can see.
Okay, awesome, great. Okay, hi everyone who's just joining the webinar. We'll start, I think, actually closer to 4 minutes past the hour. Give just another minute for people to show up. But in the meantime, please continue to submit questions to the Slido. The QR code is on the screen, and please go through and upvote other people's questions before asking your own to see if there's anyone who has a very similar question to yours. What's going to happen is we're going to give a general overview of the application process, then introduce all of our panelists and answer the questions that you all have submitted. I'll give people 30 more seconds or so to show up. And then we will get going. All right, okay, I think with that, we're at 5 minutes past the hour. Hi everyone, my name is Kaylin. I'm a third-year graduate student in the Astrophysics division, and I'm also one of the co-chairs of GAAGA, which is a group graduates advising graduate admissions. One of the main programs that we run is PhysGAAP, which you all now know about from having seen our website and signed up for our mailing list and this webinar. As I mentioned, we're going to go through general application overview before going into our Q&A. So let's hop right into that. Before I start, some disclaimers. None of this is the official stance of the admissions committee. We are students who have our experiences of applying and have heard from people on the admissions committee, from faculty, some details of the process, but these are primarily our personal opinions based on our experiences as applicants and as graduate students. We absolutely cannot predict or influence who will be admitted to MIT Physics. The goal of these webinars and our office hours and mentorship programs that we'll talk a little bit more about later are to help you put your best foot forward as an applicant. And that is what we are able to do and here for and answer programmatic questions about how the application process works, but we have no control over the actual admissions process itself. As I said, we'll do this overview and then also the Q&A. I've already said this. Hopefully you have those QR codes in hand as well. So you should be able to upload those questions. The links should also be in the email you have received from PhysGAAP. So general application programmatics, it is due on December 15th at midnight Eastern time. And there's a couple of main sections. It's an online application. There's kind of general biographical data. There is an application fee, which is $90 at MIT. This is pretty standard for most American graduate schools that range between $75 and $100. Do not be afraid to ask for a fee waiver. The process for that will go over a little bit more in the future, but the main step that you do is you apply through the Office of Graduate Education, OGE, and you have to have your application filled out. It does not need to be submitted, but it needs to be filled out. And the deadline to apply for a fee waiver is December 1st. For your application, you will also need transcripts from all institutions you've attended. So that's your undergraduate and your master's institution if you have a master's degree as well. Unofficial transcripts are fine. They will ask for official transcripts if you are admitted and choose to enroll. The committee will read 3 letters of recommendation. You really do need 3 for the application. And if you submit more, the committee will only read a maximum of 3, which may be at random. So have to consider that. One of our physics coordinators has just reminded me that to specify that the application must not be submitted in order to apply for a fee waiver. So you cannot have submitted the application because doing so requires you to pay. So that's another feature there. In your application, you will also want to have your list of your research experience, your honors, awards, etc. It's essentially taking your CV and putting it into this more uniform format that's easier for an admissions committee to look at. You will also need your statement of purpose. This is one of the key features of your application. This generically talks about the research that you've done and the research you want to do and how that fits into MIT. Then there's an optional personal statement where you can talk about parts of your application, parts of yourself that haven't been communicated elsewhere in the application that are important to your story as a physicist and a researcher. Finally, physics GRE scores are recommended this year, not required, but they are recommended. So anyone who has participated in the MSRP, Converge, or other MIT programs are eligible for fee waivers. If you don't know these acronyms or have not participated in these, that won't apply for you. Anyone else who has financial difficulty in applying to MIT may request a fee waiver through this following link. There are a few details here that we're still working out for the coming academic year. In general, they will only be considered before the applicant has submitted the application, but all parts of this application must be submitted, transcript uploads and requests for letters. You must have something uploaded for the statement of purpose, etc. And the deadline for this is a hard December 1st. Another key point for international students is the TOEFL or other English language proficiency tests. There's no official cutoff score for admission, but students who are admitted typically score above 7 on the IELTS and 200 on the TOEFL. It is required if you come from a country in which English is not the primary language and you have not studied at an institution whose official language is English for more than 3 years. So if you have attended college in the United States or at an institution where English is the primary language of instruction, then you do not need to take the TOEFL or IELTS. Further details on this that may apply to more specific situations are available on the FAQ on the MIT Physics admissions website, which we'll also share the link for in a minute here. Another main FAQ is faculty sponsors. Do you need to reach out to faculty members or have a sponsor to apply? No, you do not. In general, we recommend that you reach out to faculty after you are admitted to discuss anyone who you may potentially work with. I'm sure we'll talk more about this during the Q&A session later as well. There's a lot of great information for admissions for prospective applicants on the physics.mit.edu graduate admissions website. This tells you all about the material required for a complete application, when and how to apply, all of the relevant deadlines, and has an FAQ that should answer many of the questions presented here as well. This is just a little overview of what that FAQ section looks like. Here is an overview of that FAQ. We'll run through a few of these right now. The general questions regarding the PhD program and the application process. Must you have a degree in physics? No, there are people who have degrees in mechanical engineering or related fields. What are the requirements to complete a PhD? See the website. You can take courses at other schools nearby, such as Harvard. Most students take around 5 to 7 years to complete the program. Your studies are paid for through some combination of TAships, RAs, and fellowships throughout your years here, and funding is guaranteed. Typically, the program gets around 2,000 applications per year, of which about 70 students are accepted. There are no minimum grades or exam scores for admitted applicants. The deadline is December 15th at midnight Eastern Standard Time. The GRE is recommended. Information about the English language proficiency exams is we've discussed a bit and have further detail on the website. Yes, application fee waivers are a thing and details are on the website. You cannot currently arrange a visit to the physics department or a specific research area. Once you are admitted, you are invited to come to an open house, but right now you cannot do that in advance. After you submit your application, you cannot get any sort of updates on the status of it. You will be notified of a final decision about your application before March 1st. And except for rare circumstances where a student may have some other sort of year-long fellowship or master's program, admitted students cannot start in a term other than the immediately upcoming fall semester. You likely already know about our PhysGAAP website. So recording and transcripts of last year's webinar are currently on that website. And once we get the full transcript available for today's 2 webinars, those will go up as well. That takes some time because we have to get these officially captioned by an outside company. But once that's there, we will put these on our website. So we've also received a lot of questions about our upcoming office hours and mentorship programs. We will begin our PhysGAAP office hours next week. Info will be sent out by the end of this week. And our PhysGAAP mentorship application for one-on-one mentorship will also come out by this Friday or early next week. So our office hours and mentorship programs are designed to help people put together applications who otherwise may not have as many resources to put together a strong application to physics graduate schools. So this may be a good fit for you if you lack other resources to navigate the application process, and you've used the other forms of assistance like going to these webinars, asking brief questions during our office hours, but still find you need additional assistance, and overall can benefit from the one-on-one look at your application materials. The goal here is, again, to help you put your best foot forward as an applicant. And we're trying to support as many students as we can, but due to our limited resources as a graduate student run program, we often cannot support everyone who applies to this mentorship program. So consider, what kinds of fit and what kind of resources are best for you based on the programs that we offer. And with that, here are those QR codes once more, adding questions to the Slido. And I believe it's right about, with that, we can get into the Q&A. I am also the host of this webinar, so I believe I can only send the Slido link once I stop the share here. Get me. All right. Now, I think, Michael, are you able to pull up the Slido website, or should I do that?
You can pull it up and share the questions. I just won't be able to moderate them at the same time. So I'm happy to do that and read through the questions, and you can accept any new ones that come in.
Sounds like a plan. Thank you.
Okay.
Awesome.
Can you all see that?
All right, and actually, before we begin our discussion of these questions, I realize we have not introduced all of our panelists. So allow me to do that briefly. I will go in order based on the order on my screen. So first, that would be Arjun.
Hey folks, yeah, my name is Arjun Kodinor. I'm a second-year PhD student here in the Nuclear and Particle Theory division.
Right, next would be Yash.
Hi, my name is Yash. I'm a first year in the condensed matter experiment group.
Rosemary.
Hi everyone, I'm a second year PhD student in the Nuclear and Particle Theory division as well. And I did my undergraduate in Australia, so if you have questions about that, please let me know.
David.
Hi, I'm David. I'm a first year PhD student in the condensed matter theory division.
All right, Jenny.
Hi everyone, I'm Jenny. I am not a student. I'm a part of the academic programs team here in physics as the graduate coordinator.
Peyron.
Hi, I'm a second year PhD student here in the at atom molecular and optical division, but I'm working on atomic physics experiment.
Zainab?
Hi, my name is Zainab. I'm a first year student in the Astro division.
Lucas?
Hi everyone, I'm Lucas, a first year student in the Nuclear and Particle Theory division.
Wonderful. Okay, and with that, I think we can hop right into our Q&A. Continue to upvote the questions as they come in. So the first question.
Oh, are you going to read the questions or should I read the questions?
You can read the questions. Go for it.
Okay. So our first question here is, I've heard that many applications are rejected due to weak statements of purpose. What does MIT look for in a statement of purpose, and what points can it help stand out to the committee? Anyone have any thoughts about that?
I think that at the end of the day, what you're really trying to do is convey a sense of, how you think you are as a researcher, because that's what doing a PhD is all about. It's about, learning a lot of physics, and also trying to create new knowledge. And so any past experiences where you've done both of those things are ones that you should definitely highlight in your statement of purpose. So that might include, courses that were especially pivotal or that changed your view on topics within physics, as well as any research projects that you might have worked on, or even research conversations that you're thinking about when it comes to, what you're looking to do in your PhD. So something that is both looking at your past experiences as well as, trying to conjecture a little bit about the future of where you see yourself as a researcher during your PhD.
I would add that a way to begin to gain an understanding of what is a good statement of purpose is to find people who have already gone through the graduate school application process and had some success and read their essays. That was certainly very helpful for myself. And also try to get some feedback on the drafts of your essay from those kinds of people who have gone through the process can also be very helpful.
I just wanted to add, you want to make sure that in your statement of purpose, you specifically address why MIT is the right fit for you as well. So fundamentally, we care about getting in students, like supervisors care about getting students who they believe can complete a PhD. And you also just want to convey like why MIT specifically. So you can have really great research experience, but if you don't also show that link, that's not a good statement of purpose.
I will add that, a very good statement is a statement that shows how you have grown, not by saying, I learned to be independent, but actually showing it through action and like how from one experience to another in the past, you have actually like show through action, not words. And then to add up to what Lucas said, there is a website, an MIT website that has a lot of personal SOPs and personal statements posted already. It's from the Writing Center. So there are examples there that I found really helpful.
Yeah, I mean, to add to this discussion, one thing to keep in mind with the statement of purpose is you don't want to be overly general or overly technical. Because at the end of the day, you're writing a research statement that will be read by many, many people. I mean, that includes professors and in some cases, graduate students as well, who might be on the committee for reading applications. And so you want to make sure that the details that you include in your statement of purpose are things that are generally comprehensible by folks who have at least an undergraduate degree in physics, I would say. I think having that audience in mind really helped me tailor the jargon that I was using in my statement of purpose when applying.
Thank you. Thank you. And with that, I think we can hop right into our Q&A. Continue to upvote the questions as they come in. So the first question.
All
I'll
right,
add
great.
one last comment.
Yeah, sorry. Go
I'll
ahead.
add one last comment on the general overall purpose of the SOP, which kind of, as Arjun said very well, that the point of a PhD is to produce a body of work of research. And so, in your statement first, you want to demonstrate to the committee that you have the ability to conduct research. And also, as others have said, it's this fit with MIT. And when it's why MIT, it's not why you want to go to MIT and like why, it's always been my dream school, whatever. It's here's how my kind of work fits in with the community and the research that's existing at MIT. I think that a significant portion of the SOP can be spent talking about the professors you're interested in working with and how your past experiences and interests mesh well with the kind of work that's being done here, and how your experiences will contribute to this community in both a research and in a personal sense.
All right, great. Lots of good thoughts on that question from a bunch of different people. So moving on, next we've got, what is the average GPA, I guess, out of 4.0 of accepted applicants? And I'll just say really quick about this question, to keep in mind that this is coming from the perspective of us students and not necessarily from the perspective of the physics department. So, we don't necessarily know statistics on these things over a broad range of years and of application types. We can certainly speak to our own personal experience on these things, but one thing specifically about MIT, which Caitlin mentioned in the presentation, is there's no hard cutoffs on any of these numbers. The sort of general idea is that we try to weight things based on your relative circumstances and the opportunities that you've had in your undergrad and prior. But it's generally up to individual divisions on how they weight these different kinds of things. So I'll let anyone else add anything if they have.
Yeah, I just want to add too that don't really worry about the average because every school is different. Your undergrad experience is going to be different from everybody else's. So if you feel like your GPA should have been higher potentially, and that would be considered a weakness in your application, then address it in your personal statement and talk about, the challenges that you had that contributed to having the lower GPA that you were hoping to have. But again, each application cycle is different. Every year is different. So again, there's an issue that you have with your GPA, add it in your personal statement.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Jenny. Okay, moving on. Our next question here is, could you please share what you believe made the difference in your acceptance into the PhD program? So this is a more personal question, so I think it's perfect for us to speak on. I can share my own experience. Personally, well, there's a few different things that I think contributed. For one, I had a few published journal articles under my belt, and that is something that is definitely not a requirement of the program. And it also depends a lot on your individual circumstances and whether you've had the opportunities to do that or not. But it is an unfortunate truth that every year we get more and more applications, and the application pool gets more and more competitive, and especially this most recent round. And so things like publications is an easy way to look at these applications and use that as one metric, but it's not the only metric. you can certainly make up for a lack of publications if you are strong in other areas, like your academics or teaching, outreach, anything like that. Yeah.
I would just like to also counter what Michael has said. When I applied, I had no publications at all. So it's okay. You don't necessarily need papers of your name. I think what made the difference in terms of my application, it might be a little bit unusual in that I didn't necessarily have, I had a very broad range of research experiences, like ranging from like a lot of experimental physics and a bit of theoretical physics as well, which weren't necessarily like directly aligned with what I currently do now or my department does now. But I would like to think that I made the link between like how I learned from these research experiences and how I believe that showed my capacity to actually conduct projects and gain independence. So yeah, that's all.
Yeah, I should also highlight what Rosie is saying about having a broad range of research experiences. So a lot of MIT's theory department, the CTP, the Center for Theoretical Physics here, has folks who do a lot of phenomenology. And so what that means is they're theorists who work closely with experimentalists. And so I also had an experimental research project that I worked on during my undergrad. It did not result in any publications. However, it did result in me learning a lot about, what experimentalists have to deal with when they make certain measurements, as well as a really good letter of recommendation that came out of it. And I now know that as an experimentalist who is working as a theorist at MIT, I bring in a perspective that few theorists can bring in. And my my advisor recognized that. And so I think having a broad range of perspectives and a broad skill set that you can apply to the work that you do here at MIT is going to be super helpful. So even if you're applying to be a theorist and you have one experimental project that you think won't really matter, think again. It could be the project that matters the most.
Yeah, to connect to what Michael said, I also had like a fair amount of research experience and publications from undergrad, so I think that helped. And in general, maybe for like general advice, I think there's very few like fatal flaws or silver bullets. Like there's a lot of different ways to get in. It's just that you have to do something well. And that something can be a lot of things, but just like have one thing that you do well and talk about it.
I, on the other hand, did not have many publications under my belt, but and I went to a small liberal arts college where research was not very, it was not always available. But I think what made my application strong was seeking these opportunities outside of my college and participating in summer programs that I talked about and everything. And then I agree with the recommendation letters. I think I had recommenders who like pushed for me because they saw how I worked during the summer programs.
Yeah, it's very important that when you ask for recommendation letters, you use the words, I would like a strong positive letter of recommendation. Those two keywords, strong and positive, are necessary. So you should use them when you ask for letters.
I'm glad we're getting many different perspectives on this answer, because you can see there are many people that are accepted with no publications under their belt, and it's really the expectations vary also by field. And in the morning session, for example, Swati is another member of PhysGAAP, Gaga, and she was explaining how, and in sort of instrumentation of higher energy astrophysics, a lot of times publications are seen as conference proceedings as opposed to actual papers in a journal. So that's just one example. There are many different ways, as Arjun was saying, to stand out in your application. You just want to do one thing well.
Oh, and definitely, like, even if you have not published your work but presented on it, there is a slot in the application where you can talk about that, whether that was a poster or a talk. And science communication in general is not only limited to papers. But yeah, I think as long as you do one thing well, as people said, you'll be fine.
Anyone have any final thoughts before we move on? Okay. Our next question here. Many students consider non-traditional routes, e.g. post-bac, bridge programs, gap years, to strengthen weak areas of their profile. With the hyper-competitive nature of the admissions process, how are these paths viewed?
I can add some stuff on that one. I think there are many good reasons to take a year off after college. Maybe you want to live in a different city. Maybe you want to work with a specific group or learn some new physics and math. There are many good reasons to do it. Or maybe you just want to rest. I would say, though, that one reason that's not so good to take a gap year is you don't trust your application enough and you think you're not going to get in. I would say if you want to pursue a PhD and you are graduating from college, send an application anyway. Maybe you get in and then problem solved. If not, then you can start considering options. But also you have to take into account that it could very well be the case with the hyper-competitive nature of the admissions process that you take a gap year and you don't get in. Because the truth is there's more people who deserve to get in applying than spots. So you could do all of that, thinking that it would maximize your chances of getting in somewhere specific, and it could very well not work. So I would say, if that's your main reason for taking a gap year, or your only reason, then I would reconsider. Otherwise, it can be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'd recommend don't wait like a year to apply for the first time, right? Like shoot your shot now, and then if you don't get in, like take a gap year. But you should like try first.
Also,
All
I'll
right.
add that whether you choose to take a gap year or not, that would not affect the admission. Like whether, no one's gonna look down on anybody who took a gap year for whatever reason, or like it's mostly like people only look at your work, your passion, what you wrote in your statement, but no one is gonna think more or less of anybody because they have taken a gap year, if that's what the question is. That's how I read.
And I think if it helps solidify your reasons for why you actually want to go to grad school, rather than it being some kind of process where you follow the path of least resistance, I think it can make your application stronger then, especially if you use that time wisely. But yeah, I think that's just my 2 cents.
I also want
Yeah.
to add, if you do take a gap year or two, and what you spend that time with is not physics related, you might then consider taking the PGRE just to show that you still have the physics basic knowledge in your application.
Great. Next question. For applicants from smaller liberal arts universities, what are some ways to best demonstrate strong research preparation or potential beyond letters and transcripts?
I can talk about this. Definitely your SOP is a very good place to start, showing that you have a good understanding of the globe, like the big picture of the project that you worked on, and then like showing enough details for someone, as Arjun said earlier, who is not necessarily an expert to understand, but also for experts to know what you're working on. And it's really fine-tuning the essay so that it speaks to everybody. And I'm not saying that it's an easy task, but that's definitely a good place to start when talking about your projects, and shows that you actually know what you're working on and you're a good scientist, for knowing details, but also big picture and being able to convey and explain what you do.
I will
Anyone
say
else?
that the most effective way to demonstrate research preparation is through research experience, but it's not the only way. The committee does fully recognize that people at certain institutions may not have access to as much research or come from, a country where undergraduate research is just not as common in physics. And so one way to demonstrate strong research preparation, if you think that your application is lacking the experience side, is, as Jenny said, taking the PGRE. One of it is an opportunity to show proficiency in basic physics concepts that can potentially be translatable to research potential and research success. And so I think that, as an applicant, if you're wondering whether you should take the PGRE, a question to ask yourself is, does this score on it, will that fill a gap in my application that shows my potential to succeed as a researcher? But I think also, as someone from a small liberal arts college, similar to Zainab, that overall, having sought out opportunities where you could at your own institution where they exist and at other institutions when possible is the most straightforward way of demonstrating research preparation.
All right. Moving on. How is the research funding for students this year? The US government is cutting funds for scientific research. This is something that we're all painfully aware of. And I will just say off the bat, I guess, at MIT, the sort of hard, painful truth is that the net result is going to be less admitted students because MIT is committed to supporting the students that are currently here first. And for example, with the cuts to the National Science Foundation, that meant a few thousand less fellowships for graduate research this past round than they normally give out. And so MIT has to kind of pick up the slack for that and give more people positions as TAs or RAs than they would normally. But on the flip side, this is also a question that's very dependent on your division. Because, for example, for me in the Astro division, it's looking like the actual budget that will come out this year for NASA specifically is going to be a lot less drastic than was initially presented by the president. We went from I think it was 60 or 70% cuts to now roughly the same level that it was last year, or at the worst case, maybe 15 to 20%. So fellowships and grants from NASA are going to remain roughly the same. But I'm sure the answer is going to be different for the other divisions. So maybe you all can chime in on that.
So I know that the CTP, the Center for Theoretical Physics at least, got a $20 million grant from the Lineweber Foundation. So we're now the Center for Theoretical Physics, a Lineweber Institute. In normal times, this would be an addition of funds to support students and postdocs. But word on the street, now don't quote me on this, but word on the street is we break even with this. So I don't know if I know enough to speculate on whether we'll be admitting less or more or the same number of students, but there's just some information there for folks who want to know.
Yeah, I think it's just important to keep in mind that not all the funding comes directly from the government. It comes from all different pots. So, and we just don't know, right? Everything is still in flux. But and we are committed to doing everything we possibly can to have the students who are admitted to be fully funded. And that is something that we can guarantee, is that commitment to doing our very best to make that happen.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess we can move on. Oh, and Shannon, who is one of the administrators for the department, also wanted to chime in. It basically just means we will probably admit fewer students this cycle than normal. How many fewer is not determined yet, but as Jenny was saying, those students that we do admit, MIT is going to guarantee that they will be funded throughout their PhD. Okay. Next, is it necessary to mention professors you want to work with in the application? If so, how many should I mention? Also, do I need to make sure they are actually taking students before writing their name?
I can answer this one because in my application, I think it is recommended that you at least say one. I mentioned 3 professors that I wanted to work with near the end. Like I don't think it's important if they're taking students or not. It's to show that like there's research that's going on that's similar to what you want to do and is very interesting to you, I guess. And it shows that like why you belong at MIT and not like, oh, I just want to go here. So.
Yeah, I completely agree with what Yash said. I think you should always write anywhere between like 3 to 4 professors in your field. Otherwise, you could just copy and paste your application, right? You got to show that you're doing your homework. And then also, yeah, you don't need to make sure that they're taking their students because you don't necessarily have to be advised by a professor that you put on your list, right? You could just like collaborate with them.
Yeah, go ahead, Lucas.
Yeah, I got this piece of advice from my undergraduate advisor, research advisor, which was, especially in a place like MIT, where, like you're seeing, we have divisions, so students are very compartmentalized according to their interests. You're really getting in to work with a few faculty options. Generally, they don't expect you to work with anyone after you get in. They expect you to work with a few professors from a subset within the department, like the professors that correspond with your division. And say you want to work with topic X, for example, cosmology. I know about cosmology, that's what I do. If you're a cosmology student in the Center for Theoretical Physics, there are like 4 professors doing that. And it could be the case that you mention those 4 professors in your application in a year that none of them are taking students, such that you just waste your shot. Not because you had a bad application, but because it happened that those professors were not taking students on that year, so you were just discarded from the pile of applications. So I would say that if you're not sure about applying somewhere, so this is not MIT advice, I think this is general advice, try to double check if at least 1 or 2 professors in your list are taking students, just so that you don't waste your time writing an application that's going to get discarded in case none of your potential interests are taking students. I think that makes sense. Again, it was the advice I got from my undergrad mentor.
Yeah, double check the best of your abilities. This could be like checking a website or something. But another bit of advice I got was that make sure there are several people that you want to work with in case something doesn't work out. Maybe it's that they're not taking students. Maybe you get here and you don't like the research as much. So it's actually really important to have backups in general. But in terms of mentioning professors in your actual application, it's really just to show that you've thought about why you want to come to MIT.
Yeah, so there's, I think in my mind, only one way it hurts to mention professors in your application, and that's if you summarize their work in a way that is inaccurate. And so if you do say anything in your application, anything that's technical, you should make sure you understand what you say. Don't put anything in your application just because it sounds cool. And yeah, Shannon is saying it can also go wrong if you misspell their name. So definitely, definitely check for spelling. But yeah, apart from that, apart from like getting things wrong, it doesn't hurt to mention professors in your application. I mentioned 3 in mine. They all work on seemingly disparate topics because I wasn't exactly sure the very specific direction I wanted to work on when I got in. And so it's okay to mention professors who are doing different things. Again, it's to show that that there are many people at MIT that you would want to collaborate with. You don't necessarily need to be advised by all of them, but that you're interested in collaborating with. That's the important part.
I'll just briefly.
I'd also like to add. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
You first.
Oh, okay. I was just going to say, if you're not sure if a professor is taking students or not, and you can't find it anywhere online, it doesn't hurt to send them a quick email just asking if they're taking students or not. The worst case scenario is they just don't respond to you. So there's not really a downside to doing that. And the best case scenario is they respond, and then you know for sure whether or not you should mention them in your application.
And also this can help, maybe in the best case, you can also have a Zoom meeting with them and they will recommend you some like lab members that you can work with, or more specifically some projects you can work on. That will also help you to understand what kind of things you for your research in your PhD.
I'll just sort of reiterate something that people have already said, but maybe in a slightly different way, that you don't want to be a delta function and you don't want to be a uniform distribution as an applicant. You want to show that your research aligns broadly and your interests align with multiple subsections of the school. The goal of the statement of purpose is to convince you want your readers to come out saying, oh my gosh, I know exactly where this person's going to fit. It may not, when I say exactly, not necessarily this one professor, but I can see, how their research and skills and interests can align with various parts of our institution and community. So for that, I think that kind of plays into this idea that you want to talk about a couple of different people, but don't talk about someone doing, experimental condensed matter physics and also, theoretical astrophysics necessarily, unless somehow you have a very clear demonstration of why your interests and skills contribute to both of those. I will say that there was a school I applied to where I did mention only a single professor. I wrote a whole paragraph explaining why my work aligned very well with theirs and how I could immediately jump in and contribute to their body of work. And it worked out for me in that instance, but I would say that's not particularly common, that for the most part, you want to, at a school, it was a bit of a gamble. You want to have typically a broader array of people who you are interested in working with and whose work could align with yours.
Yeah, and I also just want to reiterate that when you're applying to the MIT physics program or department instead of becoming a part of a specific PI's lab. So you don't necessarily need that faculty sponsorship. Not everybody gets that when they get in. So yeah, again, make sure you can make an argument that you would fit into the physics community.
All right. I think we got a lot of good comments on that question. Thank you all. Moving on. What GRE scores are typical for successful applicants? So this is another one where I think us as individual students are not going to have a lot of insights for you, unfortunately. I guess it's also ambiguous whether they're asking about the general GRE, their physics GRE, but I would say if you get a score for the physics GRE that you're not happy with, don't submit it. And if you get a score that you are happy with, and you think it can help demonstrate your ability to succeed academically, because that's the main point of this part of the application. It's for MIT to basically check whether or not you'll be able to get through the academic requirements for the PhD through the first few years, passing all of your classes and your qualifying exams and all of that. So that is the general advice I would give about GRE scores. Anyone else have any additional thoughts on that? Okay, if not, we can move on. How are applicants with engineering backgrounds, specifically mechanical engineering, viewed? I don't suppose any of the panelists have a mechanical engineering background.
I can maybe speak on behalf of my office mate, who did mechanical engineering. I think as long as you show that you have a good understanding of the physics, and the research that you've done and how it connects to what you want to do at MIT, what background or degree you had would not matter as much as what can you do with it, from my understanding.
Yeah, I think
I would agree. Sorry, go ahead.
I think like most things, it's not like a problem in and of itself, as long as you like address it. Like it is something you should talk about, you know, how you got from like mechanical engineering to like physics, and then it should be fine.
I think like with many other questions about how to structure these, it all comes down to the narrative. You know, who are you as an applicant, and how does mechanical engineering fit into the physics researcher that you want to be at MIT and your graduate school in general?
Yeah.
And of course, even if it's a different field, it can be very different based on what you want to do during graduate school. Like if you come from a mechanical engineering background, but you want to work on, for example, building instrumentation, or I don't know, things to send to space for Astro, for example, then like that's an asset, and that's really cool that you have that background. So I think it all depends on how, as Kaylin said, you create your narrative and build your story.
Okay, great. Next up, how is the MIT graduate student culture? Is it competitive or collaborative or a mixture of both? Specifically, I'd love to hear about the fields of astro, cosmology, and nuclear. I think we can also touch on other subdivisions that are not part of this question for panelists that are from different divisions. Anyone want to jump in?
We can start. I really like the culture. It's very collaborative. I have a lot of friends in I'm in the condensed matter experiment group, and there's a lot of us in different groups, and all of us are like working together. We have like movie nights. We have we spend time together. It's very collaborative. I haven't experienced any like competitiveness, I guess, but it's pretty fun. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm in the nuclear theory groups here at MIT, and yeah, I also think it's super collaborative. In fact, that's the thing that stood out to me when I was visiting schools. MIT by far, in my eyes, outperformed the others in terms of just collaboration. The really nice thing about MIT is how huge the physics department is. And so that means there's a lot of people to work with, a lot of topics that you can work on. You know, I collaborate with my friends, other students here at MIT on projects. Very few people work, at least in nuclear theory, very few people work with only one professor, so you can work with multiple professors. Yeah, I mean, to me, I think it's probably the most collaborative school I have visited.
I also want to add that you actually make the culture. So like when we get an incoming cohort, the culture changes because the people change. So if that's what you want to see, you can also be part of that. But I also would like to second what Arden said. It's very, very collaborative. But I think there are also ingredients which can make it competitive. So yeah, it's a bit of both, but I would like to say in the best possible way.
I can speak for Astro. I've only been here for a few months, but it has been wonderfully collaborative, and I've been learning a lot from many people. And it's nice to feel like as I'm starting to get settled, it's nice to always like go and ask the more senior graduate students in the division or in my group for help with things, and whether that's like exactly on my project or like tangential things. It has been really nice. We have journal clubs with my PI and another PI, like two big groups have journal clubs together every week, and everyone is invited to join those. We have journal clubs for the whole division every week as well. But then even with students in my cohort, we sit down and do homework together, which is really nice. But yeah, it has been, the culture in general has been like you lift as you climb, and people really believe in working together and helping each other out, which has been amazing.
Yeah, overall, I think like MIT, so I was an undergrad here as well. I think the entire school has like a very collaborative culture. And in part, I mean, that's because MIT is not an easy place. So, we're all like in this together and we support each other.
Yeah. Uh, I can also say from my own experience in the Astro division, just echoing what Zainab has said, it's such a nice, like, despite the size of the MIT department, it still feels like a very tight-knit community in Astro. And everybody, works together and helps each other out on things like the classes and the quals, and there's lots of collaboration going on. Um, so it's an amazing culture to be a part of. So we are coming up on the hour here. So I think unfortunately we're going to have to stop there with the questions. We didn't get to all of them, but I will say if any of you have some lingering questions, as Kaylin mentioned at the beginning, we're going to be doing office hours within the coming weeks. So information on the scheduling of those will be sent out at the beginning of next week, roughly. So keep an eye out on your emails. If you're here, you've already signed up for the PhysGAAP mailing list, so you don't need to worry about that. So just keep an eye out for that. And I will also extend a final thank you to all of our panelists today for your great insights and for volunteering to be a part of this. I'm sure you've made a great impact on all of the prospective applicants and answered a lot of questions for them. And yeah, I guess I'll turn it back over to Kaylin if you have any closing thoughts or anything. Or if not, we can just end it there.
None more. Thank you all for being here. Thank you to our panelists, and looking forward to seeing some of you at office hours and in our mentorship applications. Goodbye.